So we are starting with the theory of evolution, and we are going to look at the definition of evolution and some terms, as well as the theory of evolution by Charles Darwin. So we said evolution is the process of change over time. It's a process of change over time. When something change, it is natural form. When something change, it is form over time, that is over a long period of time. We define that as an evolution. Like for example, if human being change their forms to another forms over a long period of time, or any kinds of living organisms in the world change themselves over a period of time, that is what we call a process of evolution. Specifically, a change in the frequency of a gene or allele in a population over time. So it means that usually this change that happened to a living organisms over time is due to the frequency of a gene. What is a gene from the normal biology concept? When we say gene, it's a component or it's a segment of DNA that produce a functional protein. Remember that we have what we call DNA, and DNA is double-stranded. We have DNA, and DNA is double-stranded. DNA in double-stranded, like normally in human being, we have thousands of genes, and this number of genes varies across organisms. It varies across organisms. Like for example, this is a DNA. We consider this as a DNA, and DNA is double-stranded. DNA is double-stranded, and these genes are usually found in DNA. Like in human being, we have an average number of 25,000 genes. In human being, we have an average number of 25,000 genes, and each of these genes produce or have the ability to produce a functional protein. So like now, let's say, as I said, this is our own DNA. So in this DNA, we can have a different number of genes. Like for example, you can have a gene here, you can also have another gene here, you can also have another gene. So it means that these genes, they are found in DNA. So like in human being, as I said, in human, we have over 25,000 genes. We have over 25,000 genes. So it means that a change in the frequency of gene or allele in a population over time is what brings the process of evolution. So as I said, in human being, we have a genes, and these genes that are found in the DNA are responsible for producing an mRNA, that is messenger RNA. And this messenger RNA produce a functional protein. And this process of changing DNA into RNA and from RNA into protein, we call it central dogma of molecular biology. We call it central dogma of molecular biology. Central dogma of molecular biology. So the change in a frequency of these genes or allele in a population over time is what brought the concept of evolution. So ladies and gentlemen, we should understand this. Specifically, as we said, evolution is a process of a change over time. And this change that happened in a living organisms over time is due to a change in a frequency of a gene or allele in a population over time. So that is the concept and the definition of evolution. It's a process whereby living organisms change its form to another form over a long period of time. So, and this is actually happened as a change of the number of occurrence of genes or allele in a population. And as I said, in a DNA, we have normally we have a cell, and inside a cell we have a nucleus, and inside the nucleus we have what you call chromosome. We have chromosome, and inside these chromosomes we have what you call we have DNA, and this DNA produce thousands number of genes. So there are thousands number of genes, and each of these genes are responsible for producing a particular protein. So the process of doing this is what you call the central dogma of molecular biology. So it means that if you ask specifically what happened or what leads to evolution, it's actually due to the change in the frequency of genes as well as allele. So what is allele? We define a gene. So what is an allele? An allele is an alternative form of genes. It's an alternative form of genes that are found in the nucleus. Like for example, allele usually exists as, like in the case of genotype, it can be AA. So these are allele. It can be AS. These are allele. And this is, it can be SS. So this is what you call homozygous allele. This is heterozygous allele, and this is also homozygous allele. So a change in the frequency of these genes or allele in a population over time is what leads to the change in a living organisms, and that was actually considered as a process of evolution. So now, who is the father of evolution? So Charles Darwin is the father of evolution. He proposed a mechanisms for evolution. So Charles Darwin is the scientist that proposed the mechanisms of evolution, and these mechanisms of evolution is called natural selection. Darwin went a 5-year trip around the world on a ship, the HMS Beagle. That is the name of the ship. So actually, before Charles Darwin was able to come up with an idea of evolution, the theory of natural selection, he actually went for a trip of 5 years where he was able to make all his findings. So as a trip's naturalist, he made observation of organisms in South America and the Galapagos Islands. So these are the processes where he visited and he made a very good findings and observation. South America and Galapagos Island. So this is where he made his observation on these organisms. And he wrote a book. And the name of the book is called Origin of Species. It's called Origin of the Species. So ladies and gentlemen, from here we are able to understand, one, the father of evolution is Charles Darwin, and he is the scientist that was able to propose the mechanisms of evolution. That how, when we said mechanisms, it means a step-by-step of how living organisms change their form over a long period of time. And this mechanisms is called natural selection. So for him to come up with these mechanisms, and as well as the theory of evolution, he actually made a trip of 5 years where he was able to make an observation in South America and Galapagos Islands. And he wrote a book called The Origin of the Species. So the voyage of the Beagle, that is the Charles Darwin historic discovery. So this is the Beagle where he was actually be able to make the trip. And the voyage begins. The date of the traveling is actually February 12th, 1831. and the captain is Charles Darwin, and the ship is HMS Beagle, and the destination is voyage around the world. The findings he made is called the evidence to propose a revolutionary hypothesis about how life changes over time. So this is actually his trip. This is if you look at it clearly, you can see that from here, this is the Beagle. This is the Beagle. It's now headed to New Zealand, then Australia, Indian Ocean, then travel to South America, British Isles, then Galapagos Island. So these are his trips. He started from New Zealand, Australia, Indian Ocean, then British Isles, then South America, and then Galapagos Island. So these are his trips. So he traveled around the world in order to make observation about the origin of a species. So now, patterns of diversity. Darwin's visited Argentina and Australia, which had similar grassland and ecosystem. So first, when he actually visited Argentina and Australia, he was able to observe that Argentina and Australia have similar grassland and ecosystem. And those grasslands were inhabited by very different animals. So it means that in Australia and Argentina, they have similar grassland. Even though they have that similar grassland, but they have or they inhabited different animals. So neither Argentina nor Australia was home to sort of animals that lived in European grassland. So it means that those organisms that are found in Argentina and Australia, they are found to be that those sort of organisms or those set of organisms that live both in Argentina and Australia was found not to be actually inhabited in European grasslands, and we'll see the reason. So pattern of diversity. Darwin's posed challenging questions that why were there no rabbit in Australia, despite the presence of habitat that seems perfect for them. So in Australia, there are habitats that are perfectly to suit the survival of rabbits, but unfortunately, they were not found there. So this is one of the challenging questions raised by Charles Darwin. Then another challenging question was that why were there no kangaroos in England? Why? So these are the kind of the challenging questions that he asks yourself. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, this is how we make observation in science. That okay, you visited a particular environment, is very important to observe what are the organisms, what are the things that are found in that environment. Are they similar to the environment you left? If not, so you need to actually raise questions. Why is it that these kinds of organisms or these kind of things are found in our environment and they are not found in the other or in the environment you visited? So these are the kinds of questions that you ask. So you see, that is why number one, Charles Darwin asked himself this question, that in Australia, there are grasslands or there are habitats that can suit or that usually suits the survival of rabbits, but they are not found there. So why? And then second, why is it that there is no kangaroos in England? So these are the two challenging questions. And then Darwin collected the preserved remains of ancient organisms called fossils. So when we say fossils, ladies and gentlemen, it means it can be a bones, it can be uh, it can be imprints. It means that in a simple term, when we said fossils, it means that it's what left after the death or the key of a particular living organism. That is what we call fossils. It can be a bones, like for example, if a particular living organism is dead and that organism is being decayed. So if there is anything that left from that particular organism after the death and decay, is what we call fossils. So some of those fossils resemble organisms that were still alive today. So when he actually collected those fossils that actually considered as a remain of an ancient organisms, surprisingly, those fossils resemble those organisms that are or that were still alive today. Another challenging question. Why? Why is it that these fossils resemble those organisms that are still surviving today? So this is the Galapagos Island where he visited. You see there are snails, there is island. So Galapagos Island Wildlife Discovery. So we are going to see what actually he was able to observe in the Galapagos Island. So the Galapagos Island, Darwin was fascinated in particular by land tortoises and marine in the Galapagos. So he was fascinated by the land tortoise and the marine organisms that are found in the Galapagos. The giant tortoises varies in predictable ways from one island to another. So it means that when he made this journey, one of the organisms that actually surprised him was that he was able to observe that there are varying types of giant tortoise between one island to another, and the shape of tortoise shell could be used to identify each island a particular tortoise inhabited. It means that different tortoise from different islands have different shell. So based on that, if you know the tortoise from a particular island, then you can just use shell to identify the location or the environment to which those tortoises belong to. Ladies and gentlemen, there is one thing that I want you to understand in this concept of Galapagos Island. One, you should understand that even the same organisms, they may differ from one another depending on their environment. Like for example, we are human beings. You cannot say that the kinds of human being you found in Nigeria or in Africa will be exactly the same with those that are found in America, in Japan, in China. In fact, with the way Chinese look like, with the way Japanese look like, with the way Americans look like, with the way Nigerians look like, once you see them, you can just easily identify their locations. So that's what actually happened in the case of Darwin's journey. So he's the first scientist that was able to tell us that environments or different environments may have the same species of organisms, but with different anatomical structures or with different phenotypes. So based on that, you can use, like for example, once you see me, I may look like, of course, once you see, Africans and you see me, it means that you can definitely see that I say that I'm from Africa. And of course, even within African countries, you can see that some population of particular countries also look like similar with the populations of particular country, because the kind of foods and the way that we have they are almost similar. Like now, for example, take example with maybe let's say not Cote d'Ivoire, like Gambia, Senegal. If you look at them, they look like Nigerians. But despite the fact that phenotypically we look alike, but when we talk, the way they talk and the way we talk are also different. And of course, it's because of that environment. So we should understand that different environment may have the same species, but with different features. So that's what happened in the case of Galapagos Island tortoise. He was able to identify different tortoise based on their islands. And then the next thing, animals, what are the animals that are found in the Galapagos? There is land tortoise, there is Darwin finches, and there is also marine iguanas. So these are the kinds of organisms that are found in Galapagos Islands. So these are the Darwin finches. Even within, you see, these are the finches. So, but if you look at them, the way their mouth look like, it also differ from one another. You see, we have YBI fink, we have carcass fink, we have small ground fink, we have medium ground fink. So if you look at it, they have different finches. And also that is actually as a result of their different island. So different island may have the same organism, but with different anatomical structure. So this is what happened because the environment itself, the environment also affects the human or the species of living organisms that are there. So that is why ecosystem, if you understand the concept of ecosystem, is very important because between the organisms and the environment, there is an interaction. And that interaction between the organisms and the environment is what actually reflects who we are. So the journey home. Darwin observed that characteristics of many plant and animals vary greatly among the islands. So it means that among the island, the plant and the animals are vary from one another. And then separate species, according to his hypothesis, separate species may have arose from original ancestry. So it means that from his hypothesis, all those species of organisms that they are of the same species, but they have similar features in terms of some anatomical structure, but they may arose from an original ancestor. They may actually, all of them may actually came off from the same ancestor. Like for example, we are human. Human also come from the same ancestor. So also at the same time, human and chimpanzee, we look similar. And why are we similar? Of course, it's because we came from the same ancestor. The same ancestor. Remember, that is what they call a common descent. So a common descent, it means is when a different species of organisms or separate species of organisms arose from a single ancestor. And that is why even if you look at the world itself and the living organisms that actually in existence, they are all aroused from a single ancestor. Remember, I told you in our previous class that the first living organism that was created on Earth is on Earth is prokaryotic organisms, and around 3.9 billion years ago, and it's of course from this prokaryotic organism that so many organisms came from. That so many organisms arose. So that is the common ancestor. So it means that from one single organisms, many other organisms may come from that original ancestor, and that is one of actually his hypothesis, because he saw different species of organisms, sorry, the same species of organism, but with different morphological and anatomical structures. So as a result of that, he now proposed that these separate species of organism may probably arose from an original ancestor. So now, that is what I'm talking about. Natural selection do not grant organisms what they need. Yeah. So now we are going to look at the natural selection. What is natural selection? Natural selection, it means organisms that are best adapted to an environment survive and reproduce more than others. So assuming now you have, it may be the same organisms or different species of organisms. So if you have organisms in a particular environment, probably the environment may change. So if you have environment where organisms change, and that change by the organisms make some of those organisms that are already existent in the environment adapt to that particular environment, and those that will not survive that environment, they will die. So the process in which naturally some living organisms switch to survive or switch with the change in the environment, and also as a result of that adaptation, because when you said adaptation, it means is the ability of living organism to survive in a particular environment. So those organisms that are able to survive in a particular environment and reproduce than the others, those organisms are considered as the suited environment that can be accommodated to that particular environment. So the process in which some organisms are selected to survive in the environment based on their adaptation, and those organisms that cannot adapt to the environment and are eliminated or are dead or are now become extinct to that particular environment, is what you call the process of natural selection. And another concept, assuming now in the environment, in a given environment, you have giraffe. Let's say in a given environment, you have giraffe. Maybe you have two of them, one, and we have giraffe 1 and giraffe 2. So let's say giraffe 1 have a long neck and giraffe 2 have a short neck. And in that particular environment, the tree on those in that environment are very tall. Initially, they are short, but as a result, the giraffe and other organisms are eating on the leaves on those trees. Then the leaves is now go far apart. Then it now become to an extent where it's only those giraffe that have a long neck that will be able to stretch their neck and get that leaves and eat for them to survive. And therefore, at the same time, the giraffe too have a shorter neck, and they cannot stretch or lengthen their neck to get that leaves. So as a result of that, they cannot get the foods for them to eat and survive. So therefore, they will die. And those giraffes with a longer neck, they are able to get the leaves, eat, and survive. So the process in which this giraffe 1 will able to survive and adapt to the environment and also reproduce at the same time, and then the giraffe 2, because of its shorter neck, it cannot survive, therefore it will die. So the process in which these organisms, giraffe 1, survive, adapt, and reproduce in the environment more than the giraffe 2 is what you call natural selection. It's what you call natural selection, because the sweet the environment suits them to survive. So that is the process of natural selection. And another examples of this natural selection, assuming now two of us are admitted to study biochemistry in ABU Zaria. And we started with a 100 level. We do first semester, then we did second semester. Then I was able to get 4.5. And my friend couldn't get 1 point. So as a result of that, based on my CGPA, I can able to survive, reproduce in ABU. But him, because he has less than 1 point, so based on the university rules and regulation, then the university will eliminate him. And that is the survival of the fittest. Because I have the CGPA that will suit me to survive in ABU, and then my friend also has a CGPA that will not actually suit for him to survive in the environment, and naturally the ABU itself, because of the rules and the regulation, will just eliminate him. So the process of doing this is what you call natural selection. So Darwin's theory of natural selection occupies in 4 major steps: overproduction, variation, competition, and selection. So it means that Darwin's theory of natural selection, it occurs in 4